Hey all, 118 Set Shadow here. So we've got a few different things to go over today between Bushiroad's announcements, as well as some new upcoming items to consider for DivineZ 6. And I also want to start looking at a few different trends for some particular types of cards. So before any of that though, I was talking about the release of Stardust Blade, the new starter deck that came out. Well, one thing you'll want to keep in mind is that compared to all the energy generators that are available for the other startup trial decks, this one is listed as a promo, so you're not going to find it underneath the deck itself. And by the way, it's significantly cheaper than all the other ones on the market right now, despite being exactly the same thing. You can get that energy marker for as low as $7, and the market price currently is just over $10.50. All the other copies right now are at least $15. So just keep that in mind. If you still want extra energy generators, this is an opportunity to pick them up. The Suo Yoitssui heal trigger that you get as a random pull from the BCS promos, well, this one has a listing for $150 right now, but it had a listing earlier that sold for $30. So that's a far cry from between what's actually listed and what has actually sold. In any case, I would assume that these heal triggers as character frame rares, they're all going to command at least some decent value, so I feel like 30 may have been underpriced. At the very least, I would have thought at least 50 would have worked out, but hey, you got it for 30, you got a really good deal there. Next thing I want to talk about is the SP of LG Pixie, which comes from Genesis of the Five Greats. So this is an old heal trigger from the original set 1, but it's a full art heal trigger, and you don't see very many of these anymore. This one is Stoichia specific, and the amount of copies on the market has been very small over the last few months. You can see from here that there isn't much volume in terms of sales, but to the same point, there are only 2 listings right now, and they start from $35. However, even from these small sales, you're seeing $35 to $50 sales on these individual cards right now. So market price is now around $30. And in terms of what's available, you have a $35 a few $35 copies, and then some $50 copies as well. Just keep that in mind. These SP triggers, especially the full art ones from Set 1 and Festival 2021, just go up and down with the flow. So if they ever go below $20, that's typically a good point to consider picking them up if you really wanted to get them. Now, talking a little bit about trends for some cards. The first one I want to talk about is Alina from Dimensional Transcendence. This is a generic for Stoichia, where I talked about this being the most valuable card out of Set 3, and honestly, it's still kind of holding at that mark. You can see the market price on this one took a major swing upward, and by the end of September, it was above $22 on market price. And now it's dropped off, but even so, it's settled at a market price of around 18, although in terms of volume has dropped off rather significantly, although we're seeing some pickup in sales in some points. Now, with the most recent sales, we're looking at a range of about $16 to $23, depending on who you pick it up from, and you're seeing double digits in terms of volume in most places, but a few weeks are just single digits. In any case, the card is still moving, and overall, the trend is just kind of stabilizing around the $18 mark with that market price, with the trend just kind of solidifying at that point. In comparison, something like Performing Petal Diantha, which has been a really big card up until more recently. The Triple Drive booster, for instance, a lot of Triple Drive cards just continuously get bought out despite being reprints, but Diantha has not been seeing that sort of a buyout. The market price has been continuously decreasing and now sits just under $5, where it used to be almost $7. And volume of this card peaked around October and now it's fallen off, and now we're basically... It's overall just single digits in terms of the volume regardless, so that's not even to say that there hasn't been that much of a drop-off in volume. In terms of pricing, most of the copies that are available stick around $5, and so this card just moves here and there and is basically a nice budget option nowadays in terms of a pretty good generic support for Stoicheia to consider. Then you've also got Focalor, which is a generic for Dark States in terms of energy usage, where this one gives you an energy charge on placement, and if you energy blasted at least 3 cards for a card effect, you can retire to draw after it boosts. This one has seen a drop-off in its market price all the way through, where it started off around 14, and now it's ended up around 10. Volume-wise, this card has also dropped off in terms of volume, and it's dropped off to the point of getting into the single digits of how many copies it's been selling. So, definitely not being looked at too heavily. So if you do need to pick this up, there is the possibility of it going a little further down, but I honestly don't think it can, given it is a generic. And we do have a lot of copies around $10, so it's going to be very dependent on just how much some of these vendors who have lots of copies, how many they can see move. And with the volumes dropping, there's the possibility that if they go down, the whole market will go with it. Twin Buckler Dragon. This is the original rare from Genesis of the Five Greats, set 1. Just taking a look at where this one has been at. We're looking at a market price of about $333, and it hasn't really changed over the last few months. Overall, it's seen a decrease, but the top market price that we've seen on this is just around $370, so it's really a difference in change. But Twin Buckler is still one of the most expensive perfect arts that you can pick up for Dragon Empire right now, in comparison to some of the other ones like Sparkle Reject and the new Monk that came out. You have options, and I feel like Twin Buckler is just now a little too expensive for what it is, given the number of reprints it also has on its own. Brilliant Dragon Bradyarch, which is the cover card of Festival 2024. This is Cater Sanctuary's discard cycler, and trend-wise, this one has 13 listings available, and overall saw a decrease in volume overall, but volume has picked up in the last month, and we're starting to see some more double digits in volume as compared to October, which mostly just had single digits in terms of volume. So it's getting more attention now. 1074 is the lowest listing on the market, and the vast majority of available ones are all $10 to $11, but it eventually moves its way back up to $15. Vijarma, which is the discard cycler for Stoicheia, wanted to see where this one is heading as well. The market price has been on a pretty big downturn since the release, where it topped off around 9 in August and then really fell off, where it's now about $450. So it's starting to make a slight return to higher values, but nowhere near the $9 level that it was at before, which I think that was just the point where Night Rose also got announced, or at least released. Can't remember exactly when Bushiroad had announced it. In any case, right now most copies are available for around $5 to $6. So if you are still considering to play this for Night Rose, and even if you're not, it is still a generic that could be played down the line for discard-based builds for Stoicheia, so I'd just be careful about it. Another one that I feel like is flying under the radar a bit is stuff like Flowering Sweet Shop and any of these other unit order pairs. So Flowering Sweet Shop is an interesting case where this one's market price has actually been seeing an upward trend and is now almost $1, up from August where it was only about 22 cents. And we've even seen a high sale price of $2.39, and more recent sales have been seeing this sell at base prices of as high of around 50 cents now. So the volume is definitely coming back, and we're starting to see prices overall increase. Right now, when it comes to availability, most of the copies that we've got are $1, and they start to move upward from there. So it's of course not just Flowering Sweet Shop, but other cards like Cranked Vendor, which is the unicard associated with Battling Bleachers. This one's market price is also on an upward trend, where the market price has been around 35 cents. Now it's 54 cents as of more recent months. Volume has dropped off with that more heavy increase, but at the same time, it's still getting bought for around 50 cents, and we've seen highs as high as $1. So if you need to pick these up, I would attest this not just to the fact that these cards work in pairs, but the fact that they're from Festival Booster 2024, which is starting to see a whole lot of value increase, which is bringing up a lot of cards inside it. Then there are some others just to keep your eye on, like Sure Kill Seat Machine Gun, which is a common from Illusionless Strife. Now this one is not really big on the radar in terms of like big price changes. Right now its low is still 25 cents, and even if you look at the market price, it's 28 cents right now. But it's one of those commons that has not really trended downward either. So while the market price started in August at 25 cents, it has moved upward from there to 28 cents. Only a 3-cent increase, but you can even see that with more recent volume sales, we're starting to see more 30-cent sales as well on the high end. So the market price is overall trending upward, and that's something that sellers will probably catch note of and eventually just slowly increase prices of cards like this. Thankfully, they'll still be affordable, but you'll be paying a few cents extra here and there for stuff like that. Light Elemental Pachiri, which is the generic critical trigger, basically a Cray Elemental that you can pick up, has also been seeing a market price increase ever since September, where it dropped off to about 80 cents from August, and now it's back up to about $1.80, where volume has kind of just come back too. We, for some reason, saw a lot of sales for it on a particular week for October, over 53 copies, and then after that, it dropped off in terms of volume, but it's still selling for $1 to $2 right now. So another one to watch for. The critical trigger is always going to maintain a semblance of value no matter what version that you pick up, but this one being playable in any deck and being a common is something you definitely want to keep your eye on if you need more crit triggers. Idia's Faro, which is the blue over trigger, has been, well, apparently from a few days ago, there were a lack of listings on the 2023 version, and apparently it had a low of in the $60 range. But thankfully, we have some listings back on the market where now the reprint and the original now have copies that are in the $20 to $30 range. But the other thing to keep in mind there is that the reprint from Fated Clash now has a base price of $25. And looking at it in a bit more detail, volume has been pretty consistent throughout, and sales have been always low around $15 to $20. So the overall market price increase is not unexpected, and this is still one of, I'd say, the two best over triggers to pick up for more competitive builds. In comparison, we also have cards like Devouring Arm of the Crumbling Sea from set 13, which saw a pretty big spike in its market price to over $6 from a near $0 market price back in August. So basically only chump change. And sales of this card had been as low as 10 cents, but players have been buying this as high as close to $10. But volume has decreased. We saw most sales in October when this card was still cheap and then got its hype. And after that, we did start seeing a lower quantity but higher sale rates, like price rates, and then just overall lower volume sale rates. In terms of where it's settled right now, it's more or less a $3 to $5 card at this point, with a good amount of copies there. And I feel like it's just kind of dropped off a bit, but we'll see what happens, because I think Levy Dress considers this for set 5. Fluctuate Buster Barrage, which is another rare, this time from Clash of Heroes, set 11. 10 cents for its lowest, and the market price on this one has stayed relatively consistent as well, from 25 cents to 35 cents. And this one also saw some high sales around 190. In addition, in the last few days, we saw a lot of copies of this sell from 10 cents to 49 cents, over 113 copies. And right now, most of the copies are available around 50 cents. So overall, higher than the market price for the vast majority of copies if you need to pick this up. Then talking a little bit about the Chronojet and then the Messiah Stride deck sets. With DivineZ 6 coming out, these are definitely items that you'll want to pay attention to. And some good news is that we should see a decrease in prices on a lot of the singles, because DivineZ 6 is going to be giving us extra rare card versions of a lot of the singles that come from these booster sets. And I believe that's going to include the grade ones of the ride line, like Mazer Gear Dragon. So these have been the real drivers of just how expensive these Stride deck sets become, because premium players usually want 4 copies of these, and you only get 1 per deck. So I would anticipate there's going to be a decrease in price overall for a lot of them. Messiah will be in the same boat, whereas Sleep Messiah, if that also gets reprinted, that should decrease the price overall. And Messiah has been the least expensive of the Stride deck sets to begin with, given that it's seen the least popularity in terms of meta play. And I would even say, just in terms of play in general, while Messiah is a pretty popular archetype, compared to the other Stride deck sets, I don't think it really holds well. And the final card for today is Gand Diva, because Bushiroad finally announced Gand Diva today. And I gotta say, well, it was not unexpected. Overall, what they did for Gand Diva was they turned it into the same thing as the regular one, except now they made it so that you want to play as many copies of the original Gand Diva as possible, because the way the mask works is that for every Gand Diva that you remove, you get to use their axe skills without paying for the counterblast. So they're incentivizing players to pick up more copies of Gand Diva in order to play it. Anyway, the card is currently at $750 for its base with 11 listings, and while the market price did take off, now it's around $3 in comparison to just around $1.50. And we did see some sales today around 3 and 4, but there is not a whole lot of hype around it. So most of the copies available are still $6, $7, $9, and then we start, basically $10. So there are a lot of copies to pick up, and I can't imagine it being too big. But if you do like Gand Diva and you want to play the mask, probably best to have a play set just to play test with. Thank you guys for watching. If you liked the video, please like and subscribe if you haven't already, and I will see you guys later.